Let me already give a few words of welcome to those who have joined us, and I'd like to really thank you for joining our talks. We know that some of you have been registering for the past weeks, almost to every single webinar, so we're pretty happy with that. Today is a new edition of those online talks. I think, as all of you, we've had to replace all the events that are normally the rule at EGTA. We believe in face-to-face meetings. We still believe in face-to-face meetings through screens, so we're very happy to have two very prestigious guests today who are like us. When I say like us, I mean EGTA, mandated to promote the medium that we all sell, and it's an honor, therefore, to have both of them, to have their take on the moments that we are living and how we come out stronger. Television is a very, very resilient medium. It has proven that over the years, over the crisis and so on, and we know that this is not going to be an exception. So we're happy to welcome today two people, Lindsey Clay, who is CEO of Thinkbox, but is also the president of the Global TV Group, and Sean Cunningham, who's president and CEO of the VAB, the Video Advertising Bureau, based in the US, and who is currently the vice president of the Global TV Group and will be taking over the presidency as of January 1st, 2021. Both of them run organizations, as I said, that are there to promote TV. So my first question to them, as we embark on a journey of 1 hour to go through the resilience of TV and why TV will come out stronger of these difficult moments, is how do you define TV as organizations? Let's clear that up right from the beginning. So either Lindsey or Sean, feel free to go ahead.
I can go if you want. Go ahead, Lindsey.
So we define TV as the content and not the device. So we would describe it as professionally made, immersive, audiovisual content, regardless of what screen it's viewed on or what platform delivers it. So there's often a close connection to broadcast, but it doesn't have to be. And the other thing we often say is viewers know it when they see it. So they know what TV is and what TV isn't, and generally we go with their interpretation.
Sean?
Sure. You know, TV as a term is kind of disappearing from the landscape in the U.S. media landscape. It's being replaced by multi-screen TV. So even those two letters, which have invoked quality and professionalism and the best content in the world, are no longer good as a handle if you're in marketing and media. And talking with marketers constantly, TV no longer works as a term. So multi-screen TV is the smallest soundbite now inside of U.S. media and media marketing that sort of makes sense and is representative. And to us, what it is if you will, the best content in the world. That's thing that qualifies it number one inside of multi-screen TV. And then my simple mantra is arm's length, moment's notice. Best available screen, however the consumer wants it. And the media distributors, publishers working with the programmers have been incredibly athletic at getting it in front of every screen the consumer wants it on. So multi-screen TV, arm's length, moment's notice, best stuff on earth.
Okay, good. That being cleared, let me begin with the first question. We are almost, depending on which country, but we're almost 2 months in something that is a clearly unprecedented crisis. Unprecedented not in terms of the economic impact it may have, but just having millions of people in so many countries across the world confined in their homes and with the TV at hand. So my first question to you would be, 2 months down the road, and as we look at the confinement, actually, what has changed? Have you observed, I know both of your organizations have done studies to analyze what is happening. Have you observed major changes, whether in the way people consume TV, the device they use, the day parts where they most watch TV? What has changed?
Sean, do you want to kick off first and I'll...
Sure. You mentioned day parts, and we've had two major issuances during COVID. One, there was actually a 2-part refresh of our first issuance, which was taking a look at the audience surges and what happened since the global pandemic started on March 11th, and what those first few weeks were like, and then we updated it. And what you saw in the United States was, if you will, just the audiences swelling by 20%, 30%, by demographic. But every demographic, every quote unquote day part, you just had what I call scale on top of scale. So and that made sense. There was, a surge into news, but there was a surge into entertainment. And we came out with a second study last week that we released on Thursday that got, at what was behind the stats. So, for example, and that one was called As Time Goes By, and it's a custom study that we did, and it has, taken off in the marketplace. So the first one gave us stats that said things like, how the various demographics were surging into news. Our second study got the reasons behind it. We got stats that said things like, every other household has a television that's turned to news pretty much 24/7, like literally a dedicated news TV set in the house. 78% of the people that were in our custom study said that, TV news is the most reliable source of news, that type of thing. Between the two instruments, one that was telling us things like, essentially day parts are eradicated, if you will, and every desirable demographic group is available in scale, and you want to use audience targeting to get to them. There was, if you will, all the audience stats and that type of thing. The second was the reasons why and the psychology why. And the last stat I'll leave you with that is, so we see this great surge in our first two reports, and our second report gives you the dynamics, and it says things like, 67% of our custom study respondents said that TV is now the centerpiece of their home, and that 83% report they could not imagine getting through this without a television. So those are the kind of two instruments we've got out there. The stats are incredibly robust, and it is just a wave of viewing, both numbers and the reasons why.
Okay. I suppose pretty much the situation is pretty much the same with you, Lindsey. So before I hand over to you to answer this question, I'll add one. I said, in that context with TV booming and the numbers going up, what have been the biggest challenges to all your members? And again, the members, if we align with EGTA, is the people who monetize that content of TV. What does it mean? What has been the biggest challenges, and what has impressed you the most in the way people have been coping with the situation in the various TV companies?
Oh, it's been so interesting, hasn't it? Because it's the most extraordinary time for TV. It's been such an acknowledgement and recognition of how significant it is in people's lives. Viewing across the board is booming. Every single demographic, every age group, every day part. It's just, it's extraordinary. But yet, advertising revenue is not booming. So advertisers are, of course, in all sorts of trouble depending on the sector. And so what our shareholders, what our members have been doing is desperately trying to work with advertisers to help them either defer or cancel campaigns, while still trying to keep the programs on air, whilst their entire production team is trying to socially distance. So there have been some absolutely extraordinarily heroic efforts on behalf of our members, just doing extraordinary things, partnering with advertisers to help them out in this time of extreme crisis, maybe creating, adapting creative work for them to help them out. We've seen that across the board, and various TV companies have got schemes to help advertisers on that front. So Channel 4 has offered to do, Channel 4 in the UK has offered to do free creative work. In Germany, 7/1 has done exactly the same thing. They've produced programming from people's homes. Saturday Night Takeaway is a huge entertainment show on Saturday night on in the UK on ITV, and they did that without a studio audience, and they got practically the best audience ever. It was extraordinary. So and there's a whole series of initiatives to support programming and also to support advertisers. So another couple of examples, in Belgium, they've got hashtag shop local, which is done by SBS Belgium to encourage people to buy from Belgian shops. In France, they've got thank you message to brands who keep their investments on TV. So I think it's extraordinary, isn't it, that at a time of great crisis, what you see is incredible creativity and innovation happening, and I think the TV companies have really risen to the challenge.
Yeah.
Good. Now that a bigger chunk of the audience has joined us, I just want to mention that you are free to ask your own questions, either using the question button or the Q&A button or the chat button. Also, if you wish to make a question live, just raise your hand and either Alain or Anne-Laure, who are moderating this call, can take your questions and make sure that you get a chance before the end of the call to ask them to Shannon and Lindsay. I didn't want to say that at the beginning because you know how it is with phone calls, people join as they come along. So amongst all these changes that you've seen, so the audiences are there, and one of the issues that we've heard about from some of the members is the audiences are growing, including among some of the target groups that are most difficult to get to TV these days, kids and younger people and so on. And simultaneously, there might be an issue with programming coming because, as you have mentioned, the programming shooting is on hold in some cases because it's been difficult to just align. All the sports content has disappeared for the summer and so on. So how do we retain those audiences, and how do we make sure that we come out stronger with all this audience base that has suddenly grown so much?
I think there's a pretty simple answer to that one. You know, and we were just talking about this pinnacle partnership point that happened between you know, between the programmers, publishers, and the advertisers, where suddenly there was this inordinate amount of inventory that needed to be moved, things that needed to get relief from, and that type of thing. And yeah, we saw this surge now of, you know, all these demographics, particularly, you know, demographics that American marketers think are harder to get to, the millennials, the younger demographics. So now they've come on in great numbers, right? Now, one of the things about retaining them and, you know, getting them to stay and getting them to be athletic and getting them to, you know, engage with advertising, specifically also COVID advertising, is that, you know, in the States, all of the major programmers, publishers had been gearing up to, you know, to put streaming services together and had, you know, consolidated, and through merger and acquisition, they've gotten so much content of such, you know, various appeal. And if one of the reasons that these companies were putting these terrific streaming services together was to service those younger demographics and all demographics, they find themselves with these rich, deep libraries of episodic content. And, you know, they have the ability to pivot now. And where sports came off the schedule and things like that, because some major pieces came off, they now can go into a deep library of episodic content. You know, we'll know probably by July if we're going to be able to have the production on, you know, new television. But should that come and go per se, and there isn't, you know, if you will, you know, refresh and latest, I don't know that that's going to be a problem with the retention of these audiences because of how deep the libraries of entertainment content are, different types, whether it's, you know, whether it's anything from home improvement to movies to all the various, you know, genres. And pivoting all these advertisers into all these new types of content has been yeoman's work. And, you know, the pinnacle partnership idea that, you know, Lindsay talked about, part of that was also getting people back on the air with COVID specific advertising. And so what we're seeing is so much is in motion at the same time. We've got a surge in audience. We've got ways of distributing them for their engagement amongst so much different types of content. And now we also have to learn as partners the science of what's the right messaging, how do you keep your brand going during a COVID environment. From a partnership perspective, programming, surge of audience perspective, this has been, you know, sort of learning on parade and an explosion of what's possible with respect to really being able to keep every demographic more than entertained, engaged in scale.
Lindsay, anything on that?
Yeah, our latest lockdown TV research, we've been doing some research actually during the COVID crisis and looking at consumer attitudes to TV and their behavior and their reasons as to why they're watching what they're watching. And it's revealed all sorts of things, such as the popularity of nostalgic content. So, and what people are doing is much more gathering around the main TV set. I mean, generally people gravitate to watch TV on the biggest and best set available. So you're finding, you know, the whole family coming around together in ways that they were more fragmented before, and people wanting to almost sort of gift to the next generation programs that they enjoyed. So, you know, old comedies are being enjoyed again, and dramas being rediscovered. And there is a huge archive of that sort of content, and it's exactly the right content for the moment. And I suppose at the moment there is no crisis. I think that the challenges coming down the line, things like drama, there are pretty long lead times for those. So I think we'll see some of the impact of that next year. But again, it's an opportunity for creativity. So for example, there's no sport. Everybody's bemoaning the lack of sport at the moment. So in the UK, we're going to be treated to the entire replaying of the Euro 96 football tournament, where yet again, England will be defeated on penalties by the fantastic German team. And we're going to be rewatching the Olympics, the London Olympics for 2012. So, I think there are ways around this, and actually that feels perfectly appropriate for the time that we're living in.
Yeah, the sports angle I think has been really interesting. And like Lindsey said, I mean, it's been kind of scorched earth with respect to some absolute favorites. In the States, the NCAA March Madness tournament, gone. All our major sports leagues, are now off the air. NBA, NFL may be coming back. NHL may be coming back. We're not sure. But I think that the thing we found about at the Sports Viewer is that, there was this belief that, we're going to need to find, sort of staple refresh sports content to keep them busy and keep them entertained. And by the way, a lot of the things that Lindsey is talking about have been great successes. There was also a Michael Jordan special that was done on ESPN that got terrific numbers. But what we're finding about, people who are, daily TV viewers, which is the majority of our population, is, what the sports viewers did? Well, 73% of them were either watching more television or the same amount, and they just distributed themselves across content, and depending on demographic, the younger demographic, it tended to be a little bit more entertainment, movie, comedy genre. And for the older sports fans, it tended to be a little bit more informational, news-oriented, that type of thing with some entertainment. But I think what you're seeing is, you don't need to replace one programming food group specifically with another in terms of a genre. You go from, the best classics from live. These viewers are just looking for great entertainment options. And again, 73% of the sports viewers are either watching more TV, or the same amount. We didn't experience any loss there. So, us in the States, the probably one of the biggest questions in terms of, what comes back next in, real scale with real impact is, how's the NFL season going to come out? And everything from being a rallying point for the country where people, will get around this. But, and they're exploring, fanless games and all sorts of different options. But, that's a main toggle right now with respect to the next few quarters in television. Yes, no on the NFL. Don't be surprised if it's yes.
Okay. I guess moving on to a topic that is of interest to the audience that's listening to us today is the contact with advertisers. I mean, we've all been locked down. I think if there's one thing that will probably change forever is the teleworking fashion that has developed by obligation, and that will probably continue for a while and will leave some traces. So you probably, maybe not you personally, but your members have been contacting advertisers and agencies in a completely different mode. Do you think that this period has triggered any changes in the relationship between agencies, advertisers, and clients, and in what actually becomes the priority in discussions? Have you seen any move in that, any evolution?
I think there is a strong sense of partnership, and I'm sensing a closer relationship between advertisers and broadcasters. So not that the agencies aren't involved, agencies will always be involved, but it seems as though that relationship has consolidated and got stronger, and that there are some really positive things coming out of that. So, so all sorts of creative initiatives, I think that in the UK, great examples of special ad breaks being put together at enormous speed, and the Clapping for Carers initiative, which obviously is happening everywhere. And we're starting to see some green shoots now. I think the first phase of this was very much about, you know, oh my God, we've got a crisis. The creative work we've got just isn't appropriate to get on air, or it might be the travel sector and we've got to pull our ads because, you know, you need to help us. But actually, it feels like we're starting to come out of that now. And there are, you know, hopefully in the UK anyway, we are starting to think about the gradual easing of lockdown. And there's all sorts of sectors who I know are having very positive relationships, very positive discussions with the broadcasters about booking new campaigns as well as just deferring old ones. So I think that will be a long-term legacy of this crisis, which will be closer collaboration between advertisers and broadcasters.
Yeah, that's a question I was going to ask, and I can start with you, Sean, because you hinted at the fact that there had been a huge number of COVID-related crises and that advertisers had shown interest and so on. In Europe, maybe not yet in the States, although I guess it's happening at the same time, we're looking at deconfinement. And the questions that we are starting to get as an association is, what special initiatives are members taking in the communication strategy that they propose to advertisers to operate the shift you just described, Lindsey, i.e. to move from the, this is a crisis, we're going to be with you and take you, you know, by the hand and so on, to, okay, we're getting out of this and just giving different types of messages. What's the shift that's you are observing? It
comes down to, I'm not sure that we've ever had a period where the partnership's been more productive. It's a life during wartime psychology, right? And while everyone was quote unquote forced to work this way, you know, at the end of the day, what everyone's goal is, you know, helping the marketer, you know, in extremely adverse circumstances. So in terms of, you can say, oh, well, we were just such great pinnacle partners and we folded timelines. There's some real specifics in the States with respect to what had to be done. And it wasn't, you know, there was certainly some, you know, shifting and relief, but the bigger piece was launching COVID specific themed campaigns for a lot of leadership companies to get out quickly with a COVID relevant message. And at first, maybe it was just, you know, it was the autos, and it was, you know, it was the health umbrella, you know, stay inside, that type of thing. Autos giving relief because of economic turndown. The long story short is, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, what we're seeing is, I don't know that we've ever had a period of time where with the programmers, the distributors, and the marketers, advertisers are working at such a fever pitch at launching campaigns. So right now, in the past week, 94 new COVID-themed campaigns were launched just last week. The week before that, 73 campaigns were launched. The week before that, 89 new campaigns were launched. So as of April 5th, we had 164 advertisers that had COVID-themed campaigns. As of April 26th, we have 420 national advertisers with COVID-themed campaigns. And if you think about not only the Herculean task of getting in this environment, 420 campaigns launched in less than 2 months, and needing to do it without the kind of creative resources that the clients typically have, needing to, you know, find the right amount of inventory, get it to the right audiences. And what we're seeing too is an evolution of, you know, what was sort of quote unquote the right thing to do for a brand. And early on, I think it was just empathy. It was recognition, empathy, and some specific like stay at home. And I'm going to use an example for what I think now has become sort of it's kind of become almost like the state of the art in what people are hoping now that brands are doing. And we've done research, and people want to know from advertisers that they are lending resources, that they are helping local communities. I'll give you a quick example. So, you know, we've gone from nice, slow piano music, empathy, we're with you, stay at home, to now, I picked off one commercial that I thought was a great example. It's a 60-second Frito-Lay ad, okay? And it's entitled, It's About People. And it opens up, and it literally says, the world doesn't need brands to tell us how to think and feel. The world needs brands that take actions. They obviously have done a lot of the same research that we've done, because that's exactly what we heard that, you know, that the country was saying about what their expectations and hopes for brands having, you know, the ability to be partners. And so Frito-Lay's specific actions were, they said, we've created 3,000 new jobs. We've put 20 million meals out there for at-risk students and families. We've donated 15 millions to COVID relief efforts, on and on. So I think what we're seeing is, and our research shows us, is you can build brand affinity, even though your sales channels may be, temporarily, temporarily disrupted, or for some period of time disrupted, or they're changed. But you can be building your brand, you can be building affinity, you can be talking to a wider audience. And I think one of the most compelling stats that we saw out of research, that came out of our As Time Goes By study, took a look at attitudes around, the ultimate goal, purchase. Let's ask. 55% of people who said, that brands were building great purchase intent during this COVID period when they were sticking to the formula of the demonstration of the fact that they were practically helping communities and that they were diverting resources and that there was tangible things. And so, that's great in terms of brand affinity, but there's your latent purchase intent right there, sitting there saying, you may not be able to sell your product right now, but you're doing and building businesses, right? By the type and tone of useful advertising where you're now calling out by week 8. These are the specifics of which we're doing. And that's one campaign that I just went through. There are 420 of them right now in the air. And see, we may launch 90 more next week. So, this is the way right now that brands are connecting with their consumer bases. And by the way, building some loyalty at the same time.
I'll just build on that, actually. And we have a piece on our website at the moment by a behavioural economist called Richard Shotton, who highlighted the fact that at times of crisis like this, consumer behaviour changes. Their current brands are not available to them, and they are much more open to switching than at any other time. So this is absolutely the vital time to be advertising, because if you're not advertising and prompting people with your brand, then they're going to choose somebody else's because they're just completely open to the idea. So I think that's a really interesting insight. I think the other thing is tracking consumer attitudes to what brands are doing during this crisis. And what we've seen in our study, there's a video available on the website at the moment, is consumers are very actively welcoming of brands which keep going during this crisis. And it's almost like they're judging brands by their behavior and remembering it afterwards. They're appreciating, the messages about, being there for you, but they're getting used to that very quickly, and then starting to look for, a bit more entertainment. And so there's a couple of brands out there who have, quickly adapted. I think the Budweiser What's Up change of their ad. So they've just tweaked the dialogue to mention that they're in quarantine, and that has gone down an absolute storm. There's a comedy ad for a telco called Voxy, which is done in a very comedic way, filmed entirely in lockdown, and it was really popular with our respondents. So I think there are huge both creative and business opportunities for brands. But much more importantly to keep advertising than not.
Okay.
It's interesting. We found out during this time period as well, to expand on one of the things that Lindsey was saying, that it had been brought up before by Katty, this idea of this re-engagement of marketers more what they believe are their more elusive targets, millennials, 18 to 34s, that type of thing. And there's always been, they are so marketing savvy, they are so marketing Teflon, they are wary of things that are invasive and that type of thing, and you can lose their loyalty quickly. We found out with respect to all of their attitudes during this COVID time that they're embracing brands. They really are. They're looking for that citizenry. So, we have a number of affinity statistics, and it's everything from, for example, is COVID news programming, an acceptable environment to run, advertising at all. And, you get a very high ranking there from the millennials. What's their response to the millennial advertising? There's a lot of affinity there, both brand building and purchase intent. And I think there's a lesson inside of that, to the marketer where, so often, the younger consumers are treated as if there's some detached sub-target. When it comes down to it, when you've got the right kind of content and when you've got the right kind of stimuli, you have all the brand affinity, you have all the permission, to market to them, and they're looking to purchase as much as anybody. That for us inside of, the dynamic in messaging and marketing, attitudes, receptivity, permission, that's been, those are insights that, we'll leverage to the marketing community for them to understand, what's going behind the psychology here of what they think are elusive targets. They're a lot less elusive than they think they are.
One of the arguments is we talk to clients. I mean, we already established the fact that you had more direct client contacts with clients. Who is the person, would you say, in the advertising companies that you need to talk to today? Because there's always been this discussion whether the right approach was to try and talk to the media person, or if it's more the CMO, or if you should talk to the CEO. Has that changed in this crisis? Are the people you talk to kind of bring the important, I mean, if you're trying to put across a message of the importance of TV and the role that TV can play in helping them rebuild also the companies and the economies, who is the person you talk to? And what are if there were 3 messages that each of you were to leave and say, every marketer in the world should know this? You've mentioned quite a few already as you were speaking, but if you were to, your top 3 messages that every marketer should hear, and who in the advertising company should be hearing those messages, do you think?
I would say suddenly the finance director gets significantly more important, and it would be very surprising if the CMO was not having a very close relationship with the finance director. And if you think about it, we're about to move into an incredibly challenging economic time. I think I saw a headline today saying, in the UK anyway, this is the steepest economic decline since the South Sea bubble in 1720. So it's the steepest economic decline in 300 years, which is pretty shocking. So it's clearly going to be a challenge. What do companies need in challenging times? Well, they need trusted media. They need guaranteed returns. They need the lowest risk option. They need to know that they're going to get a return. So I think the finance director is incredibly important. We need to start speaking the language of the boardroom, and risk, of course, is a huge one. And in our demand generation study, which is also available on the website, it highlighted that TV is the lowest risk medium because it has the narrowest guaranteed return, highest ROI, but narrowest return as well. So you're much more likely to be successful with a TV campaign. So yes, over to you, Sean. Maybe we'll do one each, and
all right.
Terry.
To us, I think it's doubling down on who we always talk to, who uses our materials the most, has the most questions, and asks us for the most customization of all of our insights, reports, and marketers' guides. And that's essentially brand managers, CMOs, category managers. And I completely agree with Lindsey that the financial person is certainly, of heightened importance during this. But, where we're getting our questions from and where we need to, if you will, double down is at the people who are bottom line, who are on the hook for the business results of the brand, of the category, and not only getting through, but, growth was already the most, semi-elusive commodity inside of American marketing, where, brands were growing by 0.5, 0.7, that type of thing for, mature, stable brands. That was big growth. Now we're seeing, not only a global health crisis, but we're seeing the oncoming economic crisis. To me, the person that I most want to talk to, brand manager, category manager, CMO. Why? I want to lay out the opportunity that lays before them inside of the things that you do inside of an economic turndown, where you can, you can increase, your share of voice, you can get, better brand building during this time period. I'm going to lay out the case for them for why they should continue to advertise, and maybe even advertise more inside of, a softer economic climate, because it's a cleaner competitive environment, because of the fact that when conditions improve, they'll emerge with better share, they'll emerge with greater brand affinity. And here's the time where my message to those constituents, the brand manager, the category manager, CMO, is, yes, it's a crisis. And inside of that crisis is an opportunity for you to build your business. And, the dollars and the ROI of the dollars that you invest over the next few quarters are going to pay dividends, down the line and, in the near term, that are going to work at an economics and they're going to work inside of a competitive marketing arena, that this crisis is your opportunity. That would be my main message to our main constituents. And we're going to be coming out with a marketer's guide, kind of the ultimate, marketer's guide with respect to how to advertise through an economic turndown. And that's going to be a mid-May issuance for those that are interested.
The other thing I would add is, TV is always well known that it's the most effectiveness. So, highest return, lowest risk, but also it is just spectacular value at the moment. I mean, the amazing thing about viewing going up and demand being challenged is you get absolutely, the best deals possible. So, if you are, you can either increase your share of voice and buy market share for when you come out the other side, if you're a big advertiser, or you can afford to get on TV. If you're a small advertiser, or if you're a portfolio marketer, you can get some of your smaller brands on air that you thought you probably couldn't afford to. So, if you are not exploiting the spectacular value of TV advertising at the moment, then you are missing a massive trick.
Okay, I see that we have a couple of questions. Anne-Laure, do you want to kick in with a few questions before I get on with some of mine?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everybody. So we have some agencies and advertisers actually listening today. So welcome to you. And so we have Simon Thomas, who's from Group M, who identified himself to make sure that we know he's there, and is asking two questions. One would be focused on sports. Is professional sports going to suffer significant funding cuts as the traditional sports channel may not have the budgets to buy the rights? Or could more sports now make the leap across OTT and streaming from linear broadcasters and pay TV to maximize their financial positions? That would be a first question he had. And the second ties in maybe to the webinar we had with Les Binet a while ago. What is different this time around to the 2008 or 2009 and the dot-com recessions? Are these two different types of crises for future advertising campaigns? Are the learnings and insights from Binet and Field, Tenlist and Telus, etc., still applicable today? Or has the fragmented multi-screen landscape and the commercial ecosystem changed too much? We have a few others. I'll come back to it later.
I'll take the sports part of the first one, if you like. I think what we're seeing right now, and I get the points and the questions about the long-term economic model from everything from rights and that type of thing. I think what we're seeing right now is temporary. It's disruption, right? And certainly there's going to be economies tied to potential losses in advertising revenue and that type of thing. But it is just a disruption. And, we're going to see, I think, when these properties return and their fan bases in terms of their affinity for these activities, these sports en masse is actually at a fever pitch, right now. It is how these fans have re-express themselves in social media and through every way that they're communicating, where the thirst for their primary food group, whatever that food is, whether it's hockey, whether it's football, college football, that type of thing. I think what you're going to see when these sports get to come back into their broadcast schedule and their normalcy, if you will, and that'll be a stepped process. I think you're going to see, a surgence of affinity that we haven't seen before with respect to everything from the television ratings to all the other ways that they express themselves economically. So really there I see a disruption. I don't know that it's going to change the long-term economics with respect to everything from rights and this, that, and the other thing. What you're going to see, though, is I think that, there's a lot of trial of things that have, sports-like affinity. There's a lot of people who, are open to new technologies in this and have surged into gaming because it's competitive and you can do it in teams and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think you're going to see, maybe more entities that are in the consideration set for, the type of affinity, participation, merchandising, that kind of thing, that is going to be a larger conversation. But right now, I do think this is not everything pivots and changes forever inside of this sector. I think it's just disruption. And I think what you're going to see is, you're going to have these sports that are going to come back that are going to be maybe fanless when they first come back. But they're going to return with respect to, I think, all the economics behind them and all the ratings behind them and the things that fuel those machines. I think they're going to return with a vengeance in a stepped process for these next few quarters.
Good.
Maybe I'll take the other question then. So, which I think is about, do the Binet and Field principles still apply in this situation? What is different about this environment? The principles of spending through challenging times are absolutely identical. For those brands that have the wherewithal to be able to do that, then it is absolutely the best thing to do. Brands are built in the long term. It is a fool's errand just to focus on the short term. We all know this, and that you are priming people now for behavior when they will get to spend again. So the principles of that, there's absolutely no reason why they should change. What is different about this particular crisis? Well, there's a lot that's different about it. It's global. It is demand based. Whole sectors have been enormously challenged, and some things will be changing significantly for the medium term, such as our own behaviour. So we are going to be more home-based than we're not just going to bounce back and get back into the office and carry on doing what we were doing before. So even as lockdown eases, we are going to be not going to so many large gatherings. We are going to be spending more time at home, and what that means is that there are other media which are going to be significantly challenged. So I think some parts of news brands are going to be, from an advertising point of view, significantly challenged, moving more to a subscription basis. Out of home is less appealing when people are spending less time out of home. So some of the fundamentals of TV have been almost sort of reignited. It's sort of getting. I think there will be a reset, so that people will be fundamentally reassessing TV because of consumer behavior, but also because of the trust, the return, the effectiveness, all those things that make it so powerful. So I feel very positive about the prospects for TV going forward.
Good. Anne-Laure, do you have another good
yes,
question?
I have a few more questions. So 2 questions, one an immediate and short one to you, Lindsey, which was, you mentioned a good quality program on Saturdays, and particularly one program that had very good audiences. Can you just mention the name again or say a little bit more about this program?
It's a program called Saturday Night Takeaway. It's a big entertainment show on ITV starring Ant and Dec, who are a famous presenting duo. Normally it's got a huge live audience, and that makes it a special part of the show. But actually, since they did it without the audience, and they still managed to create an incredible atmosphere, and actually got more viewers than they normally did.
Amazing. Good. Thanks. We'll add a link maybe in our follow-up, just to make sure everybody gets the name right. Another good question is coming from the Netherlands, saying, with the overload of COVID reports and of information that clients are getting about the COVID situation, how do we make sure that our message reach the advertisers? Particularly, for example, what you just said, Lindsey, about how this crisis is similar to previous crises, how we need to keep on investing in brand building and so on. And so he's asking, do you have any suggestions into what we should do to make sure that it reaches the right people? Should we maybe do a TV campaign? Any ideas?
We should certainly do a TV campaign. We've got another burst of our own TV campaign in the UK planned for a little bit later in the year. It's hard, isn't it? Advertisers are difficult audience to get hold of, and I think they're incredibly busy people, so you have to sort of pick your moment. And I think it's important to partner with agencies, so there's no point in just bombarding their inboxes. I think you know, the spirit of partnership is really important. So we need to partner with agencies and get to advertisers in the usual ways. But, you know, it's hard, isn't it? Because there are fewer big industry events. You know, there are fewer channels available to get to them. But I think it's also about consistency of messages. So, you know, anybody listening to this, you know, just, you know, it comes back to the fundamentals. It's about, you know, reaching mass audiences. It's about trust. It's about effectiveness. Reinforcement of those simple messages has to help.
Anne-Laure, I'm going to jump in on that one.
Yes, sure, please.
I mean, I think what's one of the things that was interesting about this is in terms of being of use to advertisers, agencies, marketers. When this happened, one of the things that I've been saying is, I call it when the music stopped. In other words, when things were, you know, when March 11th happened and suddenly everyone had to go home and we were doing things in a different way. And suddenly there were, you know, economic upheavals and there were distributions problems and disruptions in sales channels. And I call it when the music stopped, all right? I think the first thing that everyone found out about their organization with respect to their utility to advertisers and agencies is how strong was their brand when the music stopped. And I think the education for a lot of people who are helping to aid and wanting to be listened to by marketers, advertisers, agency, you know, corner office people, a lot of that was based on, well, how strong was your brand when the music stopped? And I think it's one of those things where if you're not in a company of constant reinvention, constantly listening to your customers and, you know, serving them in a higher order way, I think that one of the things that we've benefited from and we've been able to get through the noise, because to your point, there are studies in every direction. Suddenly everyone is trying to be the marketer's best friend. But if you had been building the equity and building the arc all along, I think that's how you break through now. And we're finding that we're getting tremendous engagement, you know, not only at the media decision maker level, but we're also getting it at the marketer level, at the brand level, at the corner office level, at the agencies. And that's because when you've got that sort of aorta dialogue and understanding, what's the problems that I'm facing right now that you need to help me solve in this incredibly unique environment, all predicated on the idea that you got to help me sell more stuff and having that, you know, clear shining star. That's the kind of utility that's always going to break through. So how strong was your brand when the music stopped? That is going to be, and how strong a partner were you in terms of a, you know, an insights partner? And, you know, one of the things that this does is it allows you to test, you know, have I got the right utility? Am I giving the right information? Am I helping brands grow? And if the answer to any of those is muddy, you know, there's some reinvention to do. So I think what's happening now is, you know, a crystal clear case for why insight entities have to be constantly reinventing and making sure that they've got that aorta connection around the primacy of brand growth, because that's what people need right now. That's the partners they're going to pick to, you know, to read their information. They're going to allow them in because they can help them get their hardest job done right now, growing the brands.
And I think sorry, Katty.
No, I saw some people raise their hands, at least one. I saw a name come by, but I didn't have time to see it.
Okay, I'll try and find that person. But in the meantime, just to answer also to the question we got from the Netherlands, it was to say that there's a very good example from Australia on that, where they are running now a campaign together with all the, so the trade body is coordinating that, and all the, if I understand well, the publishers and the TV broadcasters are doing a campaign where they say, when others go dark, the spotlight is yours. And that's an outdoor campaign. It's an online campaign on the VOD platforms and on TVs. And so I think they're joining forces to run a very big campaign on that. So it's an element of answer also to you, Michelle, who have asked a question in the Netherlands. And I can't find the person who has raised their hand, Katty. So if that person wants to raise it again, maybe they put it down.
Well, while you wait, I'll have one more question, because one thing that we keep hearing is that if this crisis is doing one thing, it is accelerating all the trends that had already started before, whether it's a move to streaming, whether it's automation, whether it's, you know, all these things are just picking up faster and faster. What is the one thing you think, the one change or the one acceleration that will have the biggest impact, and the wave that we can surf maybe that will, you know, put us in a better place?
Well, I'm glad that question came up actually, because it's just occurred to me, thinking back over this session, one of the things that we've hardly talked about at all is how much TV was changing anyway, and particularly TV advertising. Already it is well on the road in all sorts of ways with advanced TV, whether that's in, in broadcast of VOD, on-demand advertising, whether it's in, household addressability. So in all sorts of ways, TV was well on the road to transformation. This crisis is only going to accelerate that. And, one of the interesting insights is that even as advertisers were cutting their linear campaigns, the advanced TV campaigns were being cut less. So they were continuing to support those more than the linear campaigns, which is an interesting observation. So I think it will accelerate those and get them to a point where they are proper, sophisticated, big scale opportunities for advertisers.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that we'll remember out of this, two things, and I'm going to talk first about the role of brand at the end of the day. And again, we had seen from a marketing culture perspective, I think there had been a swing among a lot of brand managers, CMOs, who were really looking at this month, this quarter, this month, this quarter, and a hyper focus on short-term results. And TV had demonstrated itself such a brilliant transactional medium in the States inside of the last 3-4 years, and that for the direct-to-consumer brands in the States, we've seen that go from a $500 million business to a $4 billion business in less than a few years. And part of what that was demonstrating was the incredible transactional power of captured audiences and scale. But some of the psychology that was coming with that was we're seeing a lot of marketers who were really becoming focused on shorter term and transactional results. And we were always wary of the impact of blunting future growth, blunting future profitability, blunting future brand health. And I think one of the things that you're seeing, particularly with brands that have got interruptions in their short-term sales channels, is that the incredible importance of having a brand that has the permission, that resonates, that knows who it is, that can connect in a meaningful, emotional way with consumers. And I think that this is going to be one of the great case histories of when you had a disruption to your sales channel, how important was brand advertising to the long-term health of your brand? We'll know this quarters out, but I believe that's what's happening right now is that we're seeing a sorting out between those brands who are more than citizenry, utility, expressing their values, talking to a wider constituency than there were before, versus those right now who are looking at a short-term disruption in sales channel as a reason to throw more money back down to the bottom line. That first class is going to emerge with a set of brand health metrics that I think are so much superior to the folks that are thinking monthly, quarterly, just bottom line now, thinking less about their brand and thinking about when we get back at it. There is no when we get back at it. We're at it now. And I think that those that are understanding just because you have a temporary disruption in your sales channel doesn't mean you can't be doing business and doing business with a wider engaged audiences. And I think we're going to look back at this point in time, certainly in the States. I have 420 advertisers doing COVID-themed ads talking about real utility. How do they do in their categories versus those who chose, to throw money to the bottom line, to cut marketing, to bring it down to austerity levels, and I think that is going to be, that's going to be the legacy of this time period is here's the book for the brands that manage their long-term health metrics very effectively. And I think that rebalancing short-term and long-term is critical to the health of brands.
Okay, good. Do we have any question?
Yes, someone says, Sean, I remember your presentation in Lisbon about e-commerce brands. Do you see that they are advertising now much more in times of crisis as people go online to shop more?
We certainly have seen, we had, for example, in 2019, there were 193 brands that were DTC brands on TV. So we were at a high watermark. We are self-evidently seeing that all of those brands are now, a lot of them are getting new customer-based trials. They've maybe had to change their models and their delivery a little bit, but obviously these are the brands right now that are getting a ton of trial. And what we're seeing is true is that, for example, in 19 we had 114 new national advertisers. 50% of them were DTCs. They're not cutting. They're doubling down. You're seeing that, this model right now, where it's direct, where it's not brick and mortar, people are needing to replace, their behaviors from a consumer perspective, and these people bring brands to them. So yeah, this is when we look back at, what happened to our 193 national DTC brands who were spending $4 billion a year. You're not going to see that because of economic conditions and a health crisis that they decided en masse to go lower or sit it out. You're going to see that they understood that there was utility there were customers to be served, there were new customers to be acquired and relationships built and brands built. So this surge is continuing.
Great. Any research published by your members that they had to run and or publish because their clients asked for it and they didn't exist before, and that we can find inspiring in other countries?
Have we got new research? With the question, have we got new research since the crisis started? Yes.
Not you as an organization. I think the question is more your individual members. Were they asked by clients to carry out research? I mean, I guess the question goes to both your individual members and you as a trade body, research that you had to do.
It didn't exist before, probably on topics or something, some insights that clients needed that they didn't have, that were missing maybe.
In the UK, most of our shareholders are doing some sort of special COVID-based research, and that might either be looking at viewing behaviour, or how the market is responding. So yeah, if you want to contact me afterwards on that, I'll look at what we've got.
Anne-Laure, I can jump in on that one as well if you like. If you will, our members put it on us is the bottom line. We had a recent meeting with all of our members. We've been Zooming, and we had them all in a large group, and what we found was what we were getting asked was what they were getting asked. And it was about, is there, a guide? Is there, what's the best set of facts? Who's got the best story on one idea? And the idea was, how do you make the case for brands advertising through an economic crisis? How do you, are there recession decks, that type of thing? So our members put it on us, frankly, and said, we're all getting this question. We were already down the road of the creation of what started out to be sort of the ultimate guide in advertising through an economic turndown, and taking a look at the last 6 recessions and taking a look at 100 years of economic cycles and turndowns and how advertisers, fared, and, was there bifurcation between those who advertised and persisted through it, or maybe even, advertised more versus those who set out. And what started out to be, a great compendium of all those statistics grew, and we're going to release it in mid-May. And it's called Keep Calm and Advertise On. And it's the ultimate guide for, one place, for all of our states-based marketers. And it's richly infused with not only all of the kind of business school level detail of, the really sophisticated, long looking linear charts about recovery and this, that, and the other thing, but it also has, a ton of practical things for marketers from other marketers on specific brands and specific categories, and not only their psychology, but actions they took about how you continue to advertise through an economic turndown and wind up with superior metrics, with more share, with more brand affinity. So if you will, what our members were hoping for, they put on us. And by mid-May, we'll see, the assemblage of that. And it probably, since I've been in advertising, is the single definitive one-stop shopping guide to, this is how you get through an economic turndown with a thriving brand. So they put it on us.
Amazing. Good job they did. We can share that, I think, with the members, right? Once you've published it. I'm quite sure everybody.
We're gonna release it in mid-May, and those who are interested, go to thevab.com, and there's protocols there for access and that type of thing, and membership, and mid-May, thevab.com.
Perfect. I was going to mention a quick one, but after what you just mentioned, it dwarfs by proportion, but ended up one of the first research that members were asked to do, or at least that some members took the initiative of making, and that certainly is a first because there must have never been such circumstances, but was to even ask consumers what they expected brands to do. Do they even want us to advertise? What kind of messages are they willing to put up with? Because everybody was uncertain. It's an economic crisis, but it was also a health crisis. And it was so subtle what you could do or what would be accepted or not accepted. And actually it turned out very quickly that the consumers, the viewers, were expecting brands to advertise and to guide them into how they could help. And we already discussed the different phases of the messaging that they heard, but it took some research at the beginning to know that they expected, and that was fine, even next to the news program that you were mentioning, Sharon, that people said, no, that's fine, providing the tone is right and the message is right, then yes, the people expected them to.
Yeah, it's exactly the same in our lockdown TV research, and if you want video evidence of consumers, of viewers saying that, then you'll see it on the website.
Yeah, good. Well, we are getting close to where we actually have come to the end of the timing. I don't know if there's anybody finally who wanted to raise their hand or not.
No.
But my very last question was, and hopefully, some people say this virus will come and go and we might have other phases of this crisis, hopefully not, and we'll be responsible enough not to let that happen. But if we let's say 10, 20 years go by and we look back to 2020, can we say that television will have been the most resilient medium of all? Will we say then that it came out much stronger, and why? What is the number one thing that will make television resilient and that we can look back and say, in the end, we came out much stronger than before?
Well, I think it is self-evident, isn't it? That I think in 20 years' time, we will look back and see that at a time when everything seemed to be falling apart, TV was there as, vital friend, support, entertainment, escape, connection with the outside world, and viewers turned to it in a time of great crisis. And interestingly, you can see it already happening, but while the fundamentals of other media were being undermined and challenged, actually TV has been strengthened by this crisis, because actually viewers are watching it more and more. It's more popular, it's more trusted, it's more effective.
Great.
I think to me, I think the thing I'll remember is the word irreplaceable. And we did a custom study around people's attitudes, and when people think back to this period of time, they're going to remember disruption, and they're going to remember things like distance learning, and they're going to remember, that all behaviors had to change, and they were, at home. I think, though, it's unimaginable to most people how they would have gotten through the last 8 weeks without everything from the 64-inch screen up on the wall to that same video being, accessible in libraries and live in any way you wanted it, whether it was through your computer, it was through your phone, on your laptop, any of the conduits that, you had in your house. What you're seeing and think in terms of what people are going to remember from a human behavior perspective was that, whether it was the screen that was in their hand or the screen that they were gathering around or the TV that was on constantly on the news to keep them plugged to the information they needed, I think the word, unimaginable is going to come up with respect to the importance of this best quality content, whether it's information or news, until you have it any way you want it. And that, if you will, when push came to shove, unimaginable, irreplaceable, and frankly, I keep calling it like a food group of how people are getting through these 8 weeks of economic, and home lockdown. I think the most telling statistic to me about this was, and for us, one of the great things, and I think this is true all over the world, is you're going to remember a lot of family things first. And our family is certainly, we were close before, we're closer now because we're constantly together and we've returned to some great habits. What was interesting was that when we asked, how did people get through? How are you getting through? 29% said top box, hanging with the family. 77% said television and movies. I think that tells everything you need to know, that when push came to shove, this was a lifeline for people to get through. And, I think we knew that, and, the affirmation of that for the marketing community and for people trying to build brands and, people who want to distribute world-class content, that's what we'll remember. Good.
Well, that is a very good message. I'll leave you with one thought, maybe, is the role that media have and that we all have as TVs now with the success of the deconfinement. Because the tendency and the trend or the temptation to suddenly say, okay, we're coming to the end of this, so let's go back to normal, and brands having messages of, let's go wild and let's go. I think we can do a lot as media and as advertising medium as well to guide that and to guarantee the success of the deconfinement through responsible messages and as TVs through responsible attitudes. But with that, I'd really like to thank our two speakers. It's been really enlightening. Thank you for sharing. I mean, you are an inspiration all year round. I mean, your websites are full of amazing information. We are delighted to be part of the Global TV Group, all of us together. I think that we talk about what brands should be doing. I think TV too has to keep on pushing its messages across and across, and that's why our group was set up. So thank you for being good ambassadors of this group. A quick reminder that this video this conversation was recorded and that the video will be available on EGTA's website as of tomorrow, and that we always draft a small report with the biggest insights from all of the conversations that we have with our guests, and that this will be available as of Monday. The next online talk for EGTA will be on 12th May, and it will be with Martin Greenbank from Channel 4 and Guido Modenbach from 7-One Media on how research becomes a tool, a marketing tool in such a crisis, both in getting through it and coming out of it. So we're looking forward to that. 12th May, same time, same place. Wishing you all a good end of the afternoon. Again, thank you, Lindsey. Thank you, Sharon. And
thank you, everybody.
soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye, everyone.